It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Friday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Big show. I'm still sick, guys. I'm still sick. But I think by Monday I'll be 100%. And I'll be more on time on Monday. It's just hard to get it together when you're sneezing and carrying on and everything. But we got a great show. It is a very slow news day as well. Not a lot going in our favor today. I'm sick. Slow news day. It's Friday, so just forget about it. I'm already... Mentally, it's the weekend for me. But tonight, our featured story, we're going to talk all about regime change in Venezuela. Is this finally it? Is this going to be the moment? They had been pushing regime change in Venezuela for over 20 years. And the Trump administration in the first term tried to accomplish this. Looks like it's deja vu all over again. And yesterday we talked a little bit about the military operation earlier in the week where the Trump administration blew up what they say is a Tren de Aragua drug smuggling vessel off the coast of Venezuela. We don't know that. We have to take their word for it. Now, there has been a further exchange of hostilities. In response to the attack on the vessel, the Venezuelan Air Force buzzed American warships, and the United States threatened surgical strikes inside Venezuela in retaliation or to shoot down Venezuelan fighter jets if it happens again. Today, Pete Hegseth said that they are not ruling out regime change. President of no new wars, by the way. They will not rule out another regime change war. So can you keep track of all this? Yemen, Somalia, Iran, Gaza, Ukraine, now this. So we'll talk about it. The whole thing is fake. I'm just sick of being lied to. All of it is fake. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. They say that there is this criminal cartel running Venezuela. It's called the Cartel of the Suns. Maybe you've heard of this. They say Maduro runs Tren de Aragua, and they say that Maduro also runs the Cartel of the Suns. These are two criminal drug trafficking cartels pouring drugs into America. None of this is true. None of this is true. This Cartel of the Suns does not exist. Maduro does not run Tren de Aragua. And as far as drug smuggling goes, Venezuela accounts for very little of that. And I'm not an apologist for Venezuela. I said last night, I think there is a case to be made for regime change. But this is a lie. This is all based on a lie. Branding the drug smugglers as terrorists and then accusing Maduro of being a drug smuggling narco-terrorist. This is all a false pretense. You understand? This is a fabricated pretense in order to provoke the Maduro regime into a conflict. A conflict which there is no authorization for the use of force. I don't believe there's a public appetite for this. So they're going to provoke. They're going to catalyze. And they're either going to try to get the Venezuelan regime to collapse from within, which I think is the more likely strategy, or maybe they're banking on Maduro to attack the American ships and then we can intervene directly. But the question is why? Why and what are we doing and what is the plan here? What is the goal? The last time we did this, and we talked about it last night, we did this in the first term. Like I said, this is deja vu. This is not anything new. The last time we did this, it precipitated the refugee crisis that defined the Biden administration directly. So what's the plan? What are we doing? Another war? Is that really what we need? Why? So we'll talk all about that. We're also going to talk tonight about the deportation numbers. We finally got them. We talked about this, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. The most frustrating thing about the mass deportation debate, there is a vicious, vigorous debate. Is it happening? Is it not happening? Why is it not happening? Is Trump justified? Here's the bottom line. The government knows how many people it itself is deporting. It tracks that figure. It has that figure. It refuses to publish that number. We know how many people are being deported. And by we, I mean the government knows. That is a knowable figure. They have it. They don't put it out there. And so there's so much debate about, are we getting enough deportations? Are there self-deportations? People are looking at survey data from the census. They're looking at all these things, and they're ignoring the obvious. We're not getting the number of deportations. They're suppressing it because it's low. Well, now we finally have it. How did we acquire this? There was a Freedom of Information Act request. So someone actually had to file under the law, under these public disclosure requirements, to compel ICE to give us the number. They will not publish official public statistics on deportations, on interior removals, because they're low. So somebody had to file a FOIA request and compel them to give us the data. Well, we have the data, and it's not good. The data show, I have it here in front of me from Newsweek, that between January 20th and July 31st, so that's, the data is about a month old, this administration deported 145,000 people. And to give you some perspective, that is roughly on average 750 per day. And on a yearly basis, that's around 270,000 per year. So by the end of 4 years, we'll be barely over 1 million deportations if the rate stays the same. These are the latest figures from ICE itself, courtesy of a FOIA request. So we're getting these numbers all the time. They say, we deported 200,000 people. We deported 2 million people. No, they have the number. They won't give it to us. We had to force them to give it up. And what does the number show? That the removals will be just over 1 million when all is said and done, if the rate stays the same. And it's like, look, I'm not trying to be overly negative here, but this is what was promised. Hello? They promised us this, and they're not delivering. And you point this out, and you do it every week or every month. Look, we don't have that much time. We're 7 months in. This administration goes on for 4 years, but realistically much shorter than that, because you don't have as much flexibility during the midterms. If we lose the House after the midterms, when J.D. Vance runs for president in 2027 and 28, you don't have as much time as you think. Time is of the essence. We're 7 months in. It isn't happening. You point this out because we want them to deliver, and people don't like to hear it. But it's necessary. So we'll talk all about that too. We'll break down the numbers for you, and I'll give you a balanced take on this. But yeah, guys, it's rough stuff, but it's going to be a good show. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. Yeah, it's been a pretty slow week. What can I say? I'm sick. Nothing's going on. We're doing the Epstein thing again, Venezuela thing again. It's been a slow couple of weeks around here, but That's okay. Hopefully there'll be something next week. Like I said, next week we're going to be a lot earlier. It's hard to get it together when I'm totally congested like this. I don't know how I sound to you, but it's very irritating for me. I can't breathe through my nose, which sucks, but that's okay. So anyway, we're going to move on. We're going to dive in. And I guess the first thing we'll talk about, well, actually, before we get into the news, I did want to just touch on this briefly. I don't want to do the Epstein thing to death, but it is worth mentioning. Did you see the latest excuse that we're getting from Mike Johnson on the Epstein files? As you know, we covered it last night. There's a major press conference this week outside the Capitol building. All the Epstein accusers are there, and they're trying to pressure Republicans to vote on this discharge petition to force the DOJ to give up the Epstein files. And it's a big spectacle, and Marjorie Greene is there, and Trump is calling it a Democrat hoax and all of it. And we've heard every line from the White House about the Epstein scandal. They've said, it's not real. There are no files. It's a Democrat hoax. They fabricated it. There was no client list. We've heard all these different things. Then today, like, what are they doing, guys? What are they doing? The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who was involved in the cover-up, he's preventing this vote from going to the floor. Mike Johnson speaks to the press and says that the reason that Trump is named repeatedly inside the Epstein files, get this, it's because the entire time Trump was an FBI informant. The reason that Trump had Jeffrey Epstein at Mar-a-Lago and hung out with him and sent him a birthday card, and the reason that Trump is named over and over and over again inside the Epstein files is because, well, he was working against Epstein. He was working with the cops. He was a double agent. He was undercover. He was working with the feds to sting Epstein. Okay? That's from the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Mike Johnson. I'm not making that up. That's not from a low-level spokesperson. That's the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And it's not like he misspoke. He just said that to the press. He said, well, Donald Trump was cooperating with law enforcement. He was an informant. Are we expected to believe this now? This is the new line? So first they said Trump is not in the files. He did nothing wrong. Then they said, well, he is in the files, but there's nothing bad. And if he's in them, the Democrats planted something bad in there. Now they're saying he was actually heroic. He was a double agent. So just what is there even to say at this point about any of it? It's hard. It's hard because I'm trying to be fair. I try to be reasonable. I try to think, what would an objective person think? What would an objective, right-wing Trump supporter, how are they looking at this? What are we supposed to make of this? We're just being lied to. They're just insulting us. How can you take this? How can anybody take this? And I was mad about it yesterday. I was pissed. Because like I said yesterday, they for 5 years gassed up and gaslighted the base on Epstein disclosure. They said they would do it. They did the binder photo op. Now they're telling us we're traitors if we still want it. Then, not even 24 hours later, they say, well, Trump was named throughout the files, but it's because he was an undercover cop. Who believes that? Do they expect us to believe that? Like, what is even the goal there? Do they think we're going to buy that? And who is that for? Are even the people on Truth Social buying that? Is like, well, what does Cat Turds take? Did he buy that? I'm just wondering what the audience is for any of this. So Trump was an FBI informant working to deliver Epstein to justice. Oh, okay. And how does that work? Who knows? So I just, it's hard to continue watching this. And I say this as the guy that's totally vindicated. I don't know how the Trump supporters still do it. I don't know. I was talking to some buddies of mine today, and I said, the fatal conceit of the people that continue to support this movement is they say this line, they say, trust the plan. I'm a plan truster. I trusted the plan. Did you trust the plan? And the problem with this notion is that I don't think there is a plan. Well, as a matter of fact, I know there's no plan. There is no plan here with any of it. There's no plan with the tariffs. There's no plan with Russia. There's no plan with immigration. There never has been. I don't know if there was ever a plan from the very beginning, what this plan is or was. I don't know that there is any sort of method. I don't think this administration is thinking even 2 or 3 steps ahead, let alone people are talking about 5-dimensional chess and all these incredibly complex psychological manipulations. I don't think they're thinking even a few weeks ahead. They're on a 2-week timeline always. So they say this, trust the plan. It's like, what was part of the plan here? Asking the FBI to look for all the mentions of your name, getting told you're named in the files, then burying them, then hoping it would go away when it didn't, saying it was a Democrat hoax. When people didn't buy that, blaming your own supporters, hoping it would go away after that. When it didn't, now say that you're a FBI informant that was helping to actually destroy Jeffrey Epstein. What was the plan there? Anyway, so that's that. It's a tough situation, but that's that. Well, we'll see what they come up with next, but we are going to move on. We're going to take a look at some of these news stories here. Our first story, we'll talk about the mass deportation sort of while we're on the subject, and this is not anything really all that new. It's just that we finally got the data. And as you know, this has been a big issue of mine for the past couple of years. When the Trump campaign promised the mass deportations last year, you got to realize what a tall order that really is. And realistically, this is something that has been talked about for a long time. We have an unbelievable, huge illegal immigrant population. We all recognize that the illegal immigration itself has to stop. And a lot of these people that are already here and have been here have to go, especially in the past 4 years, when we've had this record-breaking, unbelievable amount of illegal immigration, literally smashing every record on the book by orders of magnitude. It just has to start going in reverse. That being said, this mass deportation proposal is a huge ordeal. It's a huge undertaking. And I don't think people realize that. I realized that. And I knew that last year. When they said we are going to massively deport all these millions of illegal immigrants, immediately this set off the alarm with me. Because in order to deport millions of people, you're going to need tons of money, tons of personnel. And maybe more even than the resources. And related to the resource question also, you need political will. Because the bigger problem you're going to run into in this gigantic undertaking, it cannot be done inconspicuously. To massively deport millions of people from America, you're going to need to enlist tons of manpower, tons of money. You're going to need to build structures, enlist judges, lawyers. It cannot be done inconspicuously, discreetly. You cannot do this under the cover of night. This is going to be a Herculean, long-term, intensive effort. Now, with that being said, for that to work, a couple of things are going to need to happen. Forget about, for a moment, the cash infusion. Forget about how you build the detention facilities. Forget about how you train up the personnel. What is involved in the question of mass deportations is, first and foremost, a question of follow-through. When you think about huge projects like World War II, like the New Deal, like major infrastructure projects, building the federal highway system, what is required is a sustained focus from the top for a long period of time. How do you deport millions of people? Well, you're going to need the whole of government to be involved. It's going to need to get bigger. It's going to need to get more focused. It's going to need to build things and hire people, and it's going to need to combat different federal injunctions from judges. It's very complicated. And so what this requires is organization, coordination, focus, perseverance. In a word, political will. If you're going to massively deport people, this needs to be a central focus. Do you understand? This is like Obamacare, or it's like the war in Iraq. To move 10 million people out of this country in a short period of time, it's a big deal. That needs to take up all the energies and all the attention of the people in government. So that's actually a big question. Is the Trump administration prepared to do this? Is that a serious proposal? When they say mass deportations, are they being flippant? Are they using a figure of speech? When they say mass deportations, do they mean they're going to round up millions of people and physically remove them? Or do they mean like a lot of deportations? Do they mean more deportations than we're getting? Because there's a big difference. There's all the difference in the world. You can reasonably increase deportations with the resources we have. You could get new resources, but to massively deport people is a whole other thing. So what did they mean by that? When they said mass deportations, did they know what they were talking about? Do you know what they were talking about? Did they mean that there would be a whole of government approach to move millions of people out of the country? Are they prepared to do that? Are they capable of doing that? Do they have the will to be that focused, coordinated, organized, and to carry this out in a sustained way to the exclusion of almost everything else for the entirety of the 4 years? Another big variable in this equation is that maybe you could argue yes, because Trump has had it. He knows how government works. He's got the right personnel this time. He's got Stephen Miller. He's going to come in focused, and he's just going to do things. And maybe you've taken care of that side of the equation. Maybe you believe that. But then, of course, in politics, there's an action and a reaction. What happens when the administration starts to ramp up? Like I said, they can't do this discreetly. When they start hiring and you see federal officers everywhere and you see people in cages that are being built very quickly to expedite them out of the country, you're going to get a major reaction. And not just from the left. You're going to get a reaction from the Democrats, from the media, from the far left. You're also going to get a reaction from moderate Republicans, from the Joe Rogans. Maybe Stephen Miller's ready for mass deportations. Is Joe Rogan? Is David Sachs? Is Elon Musk? Are core members of the MAGA coalition from the election, are they prepared for that? The answer I always thought was no. And we saw a preview of this in 2018. Trump started to get the border under control very quickly in his first term. In order to do that, they had to separate the minors from the adults when they detained them. They called it the family separation policy. Unaccompanied minors are a big part of the illegal immigration problem. They started to do this, and they had wall-to-wall coverage 24/7 for months. You remember, before the midterms, the narrative was that Trump was putting children in cages. Kids were being put in cages. It's like the Holocaust. And the administration backed down under political pressure. So the question is not just, is the Trump administration prepared to do it? Are they prepared to do it against all the inevitable pushback from the media, from your own political faction, from the Democrats in the midterm election? Are you prepared? Because it's one thing to do it by itself, but it's another thing to do it against all the opposition, because that's really what makes it a challenge. The rest is logistics. And I said last year, I think the answer is no. Nothing that you could show me last year proved in any way, shape, or form that this administration would be serious about doing what I just said. They're not organized. They're not intentional. They're not focused. They're not capable. And what's more, are they ready for the pushback? Absolutely not. What happens when Elon and Joe Rogan join up with the left and suddenly this frat bro uprising, golden age, morning in America, when that crashes on the rocks of reality and we realize people are actually quite liberal still, are people going to be able to fight? Are they going to be willing to continue what must be done? And I thought, no, nobody in this administration is serious about this. They're not serious about what it takes to do it. They're not serious about pushing back against the left. It's not going to happen. I said, rather, what we're getting is this sort of flippant bait. They're saying, yeah, mass deportations. Because they know that those are the magic words that they can use to get the radical right-wing base to turn up in the election and vote. But they're not really serious about following through. Now, since Trump got into office, this has been a matter of much scrutiny. Has there been follow-through? Are they trying? And this has been a matter of a lot of debate. And if you watch the show, you've seen it. You have defenders of the administration on one side that are arguing that, as a matter of fact, the mass deportations are happening. And how do they characterize this? They say, well, they're not where they need to be, but they're ramping up, and the administration is having to fight all these legal battles, and they had to get money through the big, beautiful bill, and there's all these other considerations, but they're coming eventually. It's going to happen one day. They're using other measures. For example, they used a figure from a survey offered by the Census Bureau, a small survey, which they said showed evidence based on some math that they did that 2 million people left America voluntarily. 2 million illegal foreign nationals left the country voluntarily. And here's the issue with this debate about, whether this is happening, in what timeline. And I've said this from the start. It's actually a very simple conversation. We know how many people are being deported. The government knows this. The federal government knows exactly how many people it's deporting all along. And they used to report this. Under the Biden administration, ICE released these numbers quarterly, weekly. Under the Trump administration, they stopped. Do you know that? ICE has reporting standards. They're supposed to produce a quarterly public number on the DHS website. The Biden administration did it every quarter. Trump administration has not done it once. They're supposed to release weekly figures. They haven't done it. Does anybody even know that? The Trump administration, as a matter of fact, they were, at the very beginning of the second term, they were reporting on a press social media account the number of daily arrests. They did that for 2 weeks, and then they quietly stopped. Do you remember that? They did it for 2 weeks. Daily arrests, 400 and some. Daily arrests, 500 and some. And the numbers were very low. After Tom Homan promised day one deportation rates, they started very low. They gradually got higher, and then they started coming down again, and then they stopped publishing even those numbers. In the meantime, like I said, people have tried to look and read between the lines, tried to read the tea leaves. How many people really are being removed? People are looking at traffic in Los Angeles. Did you see that? They said that if you look at Google Maps of rush hour traffic in Los Angeles, it looks like traffic seems to be better. So I guess all these illegals got deported. People are having to look at these very unscientific measures to get an idea of whether or not these removals are happening. Well, it turns out we now have a number from ICE. We got it from a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act. ICE will not report the numbers, so someone had to ask for them through the legal channels. We now have the numbers, and they're pretty rough. It shows that from January 20th, Inauguration Day, until July 31st, 1 month ago, the Trump administration deported 145,000 people. And by the way, that includes confirmed self-deportations. That figure includes every type of removal, every person that ICE has removed, in addition to every person that ICE can verify has voluntarily left. Now, maybe people voluntarily left that we don't know about. Certainly that has happened. Can we quantify it? Not reliably, because we can't count who's not here. What we can count is who has been deported, and we can measure who has been verified as leaving using the CBP One app or leaving through an immigration court. And that number is not good. It's about 145,000 in 7 months. On average, that's about 750 per day. And like I said, if you extrapolate that out and calculate what that would be over the course of a year, it's about 275,000. Over 4 years, over 1 million, just shy of over 1 million. This is a story from Newsweek. It says, quote, Newsweek has analyzed numbers released by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement under a FOIA request, which provided recent records of immigrants to depart the U.S. through July 31st. Since President Trump took office on January 20th, ICE had deported 145,000 illegal immigrants, peaking in June with a total of 28,000. Just under 1,000 per day. So the monthly totals are going up and down, but the highest month so far was in June. They went down significantly in July, and in June it topped off at just under 1,000 per day. These are not high numbers. It says in February, the first full month of Trump's second term, confirmed voluntary departures were at 592. By July, that number climbed to 4,241. The beginning of the increase roughly aligns with the repurposing of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection app. Under former President Biden, the CBP One was a tool for immigrants to book appointments with officials at the border. The administration transformed it into a tool for those without legal status to report self-deportation. These are the numbers. And here's the thing. When we as a coalition, because let's say that the Groypers in some sense were part of the MAGA coalition. I know people are going to say, what are you talking about? You didn't vote for Trump. I did not vote for Trump. I told you not to. Nevertheless, I'm sure that a lot of people that sympathize with me, immigration restrictionists, nativists, they voted for Trump. So let's just say, better said, immigration restrictionists who are a part of the MAGA coalition, they voted for Trump because mass deportations was their priority. That was promised to them, to us, by Trump. That's why Trump received those votes. Now it's not being delivered. And you look around at what this administration is doing, it's not that this administration can't do anything. It's forcing Colombia to police anti-Semitism. It bombed Iran. It revoked the visas of anybody that criticized Israel. It's reviewing 55 million visas and the social media accounts of those visa holders to see what their opinions are of the war in Gaza. So the administration can do some things for some people. It chooses not to do the other things for other people. And my question in the previous election, it's the same question I pose in every election. What exactly is in it for us? Because what we're being told is that we're part of this grand bargain where we have to tolerate a GOP controlled by Israel, and that's just the reality. But in exchange, we are getting something. Don't worry, we're getting mass deportations. This is what we're being told. You may not like everything the Trump administration is doing. You may not like everyone in the Trump administration, but you are a participant in this. You are a signatory on this grand bargain that we made with them. We, the white Americans, we, the nativists, we made a deal with the Zionists that control the party. They get their war in Gaza. Well, who even cares? I hope they just kill each other. That's all the way over there. That's not our problem. I care about America. They say the Israelis get their war. They get the West Bank and Gaza. We get our mass deportations. All right. Well, what if they're not holding up their end of the bargain? What if they never intended to hold up their end of the bargain? What if the structure of the deal is all wrong? Because we give them our vote and then they're in the driver's seat. People like us are not in power. They are in power. So you have two parties that come together ostensibly for the execution of a deal. And we agree, okay, you get one thing, I get this thing, but the other party executes the deal. The other party is in charge of how the deal is executed. Now, is that how any deal really works? Would you make any deal like that with your finances? Would you make any deal like that with a business partner? Would you enter into a deal with another party, a quid pro quo, and that other party is unilaterally in control of how the deal is carried out and whether they're going to hold up their end of the bargain? Of course not. What am I talking about here? If the proposition is the Republican Party is coming to us and saying, all right, everybody, we're going to have to give the Israelis their war, but don't worry, you're going to get immigration. It's a matter of trust that they're going to follow through because the Israelis are running the government. We're not running the government. Nativists are not. Who's running even the deportation policy? Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is a Zionist Jew. Stephen Miller is a Zionist Jew cheerleading the war in Iran. He was married to his Jewish wife by Trump's ambassador to Israel. We have no control. We are not in the driver's seat. Who's being appointed? Darren Beattie, Mike Benz, Yoram Hazony's people. These are all Jews. Tucker Carlson had on a guest who was fired from the State Department because Mark Levin's son-in-law, nephew-in-law complained. So we think we're making this deal. We're trusting them to execute the deal out of good faith on our behalf and hold up their end of the bargain. Why would they do that? We vote for them. They get all the power. They do the things that they want, and the things that we want are a complete afterthought. Obviously. They're going to do the things they want, and if we're lucky, maybe they'll do the things that they promised that they would do for us. But they don't really care that much. That's the problem. Now, the reason I'm saying this thing about mass deportations, let's just be honest, it isn't happening. It's been 7 months and there has been no significant deportations. And before people say, well, we got to pressure the administration to get these numbers higher, look, like on some level, I'm not opposed to that. People say we got to pressure the administration. If it's not happening by now, it ain't going to happen. We got to put the pressure on. First of all, what does that mean? You're going to get on social media and say what? Dude, they run social media. Elon Musk owns Twitter. The Trump administration's facilitating the purchase of TikTok. And all the influencers on our side are paid off by the GOP. You are not pressuring shit. Okay? You're not pressuring anything. Pressure. You think you can generate pressure? Vance's best friend owns the fucking platform. All the top influencers are paid by the GOP. What do you think you're pressuring exactly? So that's one. When people say that, what do they mean? You're going to go online with your 300 follower account and complain? And who's going to listen? All these people in government, they know what they promised. They know what they said. You think they're going to look at this 300 follower account and say, oh boy, well, this guy's not happy. I guess we have to move all of government to deport millions of people, because it doesn't work that way. I'm not opposed to it, but think about the calculus here. Let's think about a couple of things. First, let's think about the economy. We're entering stagflation. What does that mean? Interest rates are already high, but inflation is high. Inflation is stubborn, looks like it's might be creeping back up. If you lower interest rates, there's a chance that inflation might go up more. You already have tariffs in place. Arguably, in the short term, tariffs have an inflationary effect. In the short term, these tariffs will increase prices. So you have stubbornly high inflation because of COVID, quantitative easing, supply chains, tariffs. It's stubborn. At the same time, the job market is very slow right now. There's some red flags in the economy. That's why Trump wants to lower the rates. He wants to grease up the economy. He wants the stock market to go up. He wants hiring to improve. So we're already in this very tricky situation where we have to choose between high inflation or slow growth. You either lower interest rates and you get high inflation and maybe you kickstart growth, or you keep interest rates high and inflation stays down, but growth is slow and you're sort of effectively in a recession. What happens when you massively deport illegal immigrants? Well, look, a lot of them have jobs. And that means a couple of things. That means they work for low wages. The other thing means they spend money here. So what happens when you deport illegal immigrants? Well, wages are going to have to go up because the labor pool shrinks. Labor cost goes up. Prices have to go up. That's inflation. And consumer spending goes down. These illegal immigrants, they do spend money here. So that slows growth. So deporting illegal immigrants is not something the administration wants to do right now. And if you don't believe me, just ask the administration. What did Trump say when he passed the Big Beautiful Bill? The Big Beautiful Bill was supposed to remedy all these resource problems that were hindering mass deportations. They appropriated $150 billion to hire the ICE agents, build the facilities, get it going. And what did Trump say the day the bill was passed? He said, we will not deport illegal immigrants working on farms, in hotels, in restaurants, in construction. He said, and the radical right won't like that, but they'll understand. He said, we need the people. We need these people to stay here. What does he mean we need the people? We have people here. It's not that we need the people, it's that we need the people to stay here working at the wages they're working at because we don't want to upset the apple cart. So for economic reasons, that's why the deportations are going down. The Big Beautiful Bill passed in what, May, June? Deportations went down. Think about it. We appropriated $150 billion to get deportations up. Trump deployed the National Guard to LA to suppress the anti-deportation riots. And after both of these things, deportations are down 20%. They're down month over month. And they told us why. It's because even though the base wants it, even though the administration promised it, it's just not going to work for the economy. So the economic constraints are there. Then there's the political constraints. When those riots were happening in LA, you know who spoke up against the deportations? It wasn't just leftists. It was also Joe Rogan. It was also Elon Musk. They said, we're okay with deporting criminals. I don't know about everybody else, though. And they signaled that a year ago. Joe Rogan is not a far-right ethno-nationalist. Neither is the All In podcast or David Sachs, or for that matter, anyone in Silicon Valley. Now, what happens in the midterm elections when let's say next year in 2026, because people think the numbers are low now. Okay, what if they get jacked up? What if the numbers are doubled? Well, you're getting killed with Hispanic voters. You're going to have people like Joe Rogan in Silicon Valley. They'll be speaking out against it. So how's that going to help? And maybe the money dries up for the Republicans in the midterms too, because now Silicon Valley is such a big patron of the GOP. And that's not to mention what is going to be the political effect of wall-to-wall coverage of Gestapo ICE raids and riots and Antifa terrorism trying to stop them. It's not going to happen politically either. So it is September 2025. The midterms realistically start in the spring of next year. So you got about 8 months before this becomes reality. The economic constraints are already there. And then from then until election day, you can't do mass deportations. What happens in 2027? Well, the race for 2028 begins. Of course, 2028, you're going to have a wide open Republican and Democrat field, just like in 2016. And these primaries, they tend to start in 2020. The Democrat primary started in January 2019, 2 months after the midterms. In 2016, the GOP primary started in April 2015, 5 months after the midterms. So the midterms are going to be most of next year. And then within maybe 6 months of the midterms, the 2028 election begins. And it's the same logic, the same economic logic, the same political logic. So people are out there saying, we gotta pressure the administration. We gotta speak out. Dude, they know what they're doing. Who do you think is sticking the knife in your back and twisting it? They're doing it. They know what they promised. They know what people are saying. They're not delivering. And who are they gonna listen to? Elon Musk, the economy, the elections, or you? Because you're mad on Twitter, but you're going to vote Republican anyway. They don't care. You're mad. The Republicans have been mad for 30 years. They vote anyway. They don't care. It costs them nothing. They care about the economy. They care about the elections. They care about the midterms. So really what I'm saying when I talk about deportations is think about how politics works for you. Does it work for you? Is this deal working for you? Illegal immigration is like maybe the biggest thing ruining our quality of life. We could deal with all the other nonsense. But on top of it, you got Indian truck drivers slamming into people, causing a fucking 6 million mile long pileup on the highway. You've got Venezuelans with their kids on their back selling candy bars they stole from Walgreens in the middle of the intersection. They're stealing cars. They're breaking into cars, driving up the cost of housing. We don't even know where to put all these people. They're making it so that it takes 8 hours to get seen at a hospital at any given time. All we voted for in the last election was get these fucking people out. We didn't vote to bomb Iran. We didn't vote to have regime change in Venezuela. We didn't vote to make Ukraine safe for democracy. And yet we're doing all that. We didn't vote to make Colombia safe for Jews so they don't get criticized. We didn't vote to make it so that you can't boycott Israel. We voted to get these fucking people out. And what was promised was a whole of government effort to massively deport these people. In reality, they were never serious about doing it. They never intended on following through. They said that because they knew that's what you wanted to hear. They do it every election. It's called red meat for the base. It's juicy. It's bloody. They throw it to you. It's a scrum. The people go in. And then they know they'll do what they always do. They forget about it, like they do with everything. The Epstein files, the Capitol footage, you name it. Obamacare, did they ever repeal Obamacare? They campaigned on that in 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. It's still there. It's Obamacare still there. It's all still there. So this is where you need to change how you think about politics, where you think, oh, well, it's going to be better under Trump. Well, look, I mean, I don't care what happens in Gaza as long as we get our deportations. When you vote, it's sort of like, think about it like this. When the Federal Reserve prints money, who does the money go to first? It goes to the finance sector first. And they benefit from that. It actually matters when the Federal Reserve prints money and when they do quantitative easing and they manipulate their balance sheet. Who does the money, where does that hit first? It first hits with the banks and the big corporations. And they get a little bit of an edge, sort of like a casino. You know how in a casino, every single game mathematically makes it fucking impossible for you to lose? The best odds you're going to get is if you're card counting on blackjack, you get 49% or something. It's like when the Federal Reserve prints money. And it's like in politics. When you vote, you are not getting in power. Trump is. When you vote, you don't become president. Trump becomes president, obviously. But then what does Trump do? Trump nominates a cabinet. Trump nominates heads of every agency and department in the federal government. And then what do? Well, they pick their deputies, and their deputies pick deputies, and their deputies pick policy directors and all kinds of different people. And those people actually have the power. And who are those people? The donors. The billionaires pick the personnel. Because the billionaires say, look, Trump, I'll give you $100 million to help you win the election, but then I get to pick your Secretary of State. I get to be your Secretary of Education. How do you think Linda McMahon became the Secretary of Education? Or Betsy DeVos in the last Trump term? They gave the money, and then they become the personnel, and then they get to write the policy. They have the power. You are outside pressuring them, writing your tweets, being angry. Why aren't you deporting more people? They have the power. They wield the power of the government. And we're just trusting them. Okay, here's all the power. Now are you going to do what you promised us you'd do? Why would they do it? They're going to do what helps them. They don't give a fuck about illegal immigration. It doesn't affect them. Do you think illegal immigration affects any of these people? It does not. It affects working class people. It affects people in the heartland of the country. It affects people that actually have to go to a hospital with the scrum. It does not affect them. That's just one example. And so how do you think about politics? We need to take power. Forget about voting. Just get that out of your vocabulary. How can we use power? Using the vote is one way. We can get together, as I've said many times, and say, listen, we are going to get together and withhold our vote. to punish you, to reward you, to make a demand. That's a way to use power. That's one way, collective action. There's other ways. What if we all got together and boycotted? What if we all got together and stopped sending money? But collective action. Using your vote, using your dollar, doing other things. Collective action, that's one. Another one is you actually get into the halls of power. That's why I encourage Groypers, go to college, join a college Republican chapter, volunteer for campaigns, get involved in state and local government, try to get in DC. Make as much money as you can. Maybe one day you could be a donor to a congressman. You could be a congressman. You could donate to the president. We want power. That's what this is all about. Pressuring, raising awareness. Fuck all that. If I hear one more person saying we need to raise awareness, I'm just going to punch them in the throat. Well, we need to raise awareness. Well, we need to tell people. And don't get me wrong, that's part of what we do, but it's a means to an end. Why are we raising awareness? To get power. Why are we raising the consciousness? To get power. Why are we winning the argument? To get power. It's not about, convincing your grandma to be a groyper. It's about seeding the ground so that the culture changes, so that people that have our views can attain institutional power, so that some guy doesn't get blasted out of his his college Republican chapter because he liked an edgy meme about Israel. It's about seeding the ground with ideas for a cultural change so that people are not nuked from orbit for having our views. Then they can be college Republicans. If they could be CRs, they could work on campaigns. If they could work on campaigns, they can work in congressional offices. If they can work in congressional offices, they can be deputies in departments and agencies, and so on and so forth. But eventually we want to be those people on that side of the equation. We don't want to be the people outside complaining, being angry, and, okay, we'll vote, whatever. We want to be the people on the other side with the power. And to the extent that we have to vote, do vote. To the extent that we have to spend our money, do spend our money. Collective action is the way. Don't give them anything for free. Don't give them your vote. They're not giving us anything. When have you ever been given fucking anything? You don't get anything. This administration doesn't. What did they just take away? This administration today just made it so that airlines don't have to refund you for canceling your flights. They're not giving away anything. If anything, the Democrats give stuff away. Think about it. In not the last election, but the election before that in 2020, Trump could have given you another stimulus. Instead, he appointed this idiot, Amy Coney Barrett, to the Supreme Court. They could have given you $1,000 in your fucking hands, and they gave us this. She adopted George Floyd and cried about, black people. They don't give you anything. Biden forgave student loans. Biden took medical debt off your credit score. That helped me. I had an ambulance bill that my mom didn't pay, some clerical nonsense, and it was on my credit report. Biden took it off. That helped my life. You know when Trump has ever helped my life? 0 times, ever. Never gotten anything. They take shit away. And next time you book a flight and they cancel and you're not entitled to a refund, remember when you give Trump your vote and we're all on the team and we just got to do our part and hold the line. They're not giving you anything. Don't give them anything. Everything must be a play. Everything must be a strategy. Don't give them your vote. Trade the vote. Make your vote a performance. That's what I did in the last election. I didn't vote. I said, I'm going to use the election as a drama. Oh, you care about winning? Well, listen to me. You want to win. You want the votes. I'm not going to give them to you. I'm not going to give them to you, and I'm going to use it to promote my issues. Now what? We're supposed to trust the plan, your plan. How about we're going to get groypers inside the government? We need to get people that are actually on that side of the vote. That's why I say mass deportations. The reason I tell you mass deportations are a failure, one, that's a fact. The reason I harp on it is to demoralize you. I am telling you that to break you. I am grabbing you by your hair, shoving your face in the mud, and saying this is what voting has wrought. All of this negotiating with yourself in your head, playing with dolls. Oh, Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance, action figures are going to physically remove them. That's not happening. That's not real. 10 years, people's real lives had been destroyed. 10 years, people actually got killed in the BLM riots that Trump let happen. People actually killed themselves after Charlottesville that Trump let get out of control. People actually had their real lives destroyed being locked up after January 6th, or having their money frozen or being put on the no-fly list. And what do we have to show for it? So it is to tell you this is a reality check. The idea that if we just keep putting down the vote and we're incrementally moving towards far-right ethno-nationalism, if we rack up enough Republican failures in a 700-year period, eventually we'll take back America. It's not happening. It wasn't happening in 2017. It's not happening now. They get their wars. They get their corporate tax cut. They buried the Epstein files. No mass deportations. And that's by design. That's how that system works. So this is why people got to get off of the hamster wheel. We're playing hamburger on a string here. They're riding our back with a fishing line over our head with a hamburger, and us true goyim are forever chasing it. You have to get off of the treadmill, get off the hamster wheel. Do something that they fear. And by that, I'm not insinuating violence. I'm saying cause the GOP to panic. The GOP is terrified that the groypers are so popular and we are going to fucking torpedo them over Epstein, Israel, Vance. Damn right we are. And they should fear it. Because the message is this: give us another candidate or we will make him lose. Try again. Roll again. You don't want us to make a problem for you? Well, then you better make us happy. Get this fat fuck out of our face. Or buckle up and have 4 years of Gavin Newsom. We did 4 years of Biden. We lived. Everyone's going to be fine, actually. Republicans, and by the way, for everybody that says, oh, what if a Democrat wins? Need I remind you, the Democrats stole the election in 2020 and Republicans were complicit. Why does no one talk about this? Think about this. They're telling you, we have to vote. We can't let the Democrats win. If the Democrats win, it's going to be so bad. You, the voters, can't let that happen. Where was that urgency when the Democrats stole it in 20? Every swing state had a Republican-controlled legislature. Almost all of them had Republican governors. Why did they not move a finger to stop the election from being stolen? Why did Trump's White House counsel not do anything? Why did the Republicans in the House and the Senate, why did they not do anything? We controlled 26 out of 50 state delegations in 2020. They did nothing. Mitch McConnell held impeachment over Trump's head after January 6th. So it's like, if you care more about Republicans staying in power than they do, what does that tell you? They gaslighted you into being like really invested. I got to go out and vote. I got to bring 10 people. Scott Pressler, they got this guy. It's like a slave driver. They're working this guy like a dog in Pennsylvania, getting we got to go to Pennsylvania and get everybody to vote. And it's like, when it actually mattered, Republicans, they said, we're okay with Biden becoming president. That's fine. What does that tell you? So anyway, so that's that. But we're going to move on. I don't even think we're going to get into this Venezuela story. But that's that. That's why I keep harping on this. It's like, people think that the thrust of this is, hey, Trump, get these deportations a little bit higher. Look, it ain't happening. If they were going to deport 10 million people, like, that's just not what this is. Like, I don't know what to tell you. That's not happening. Like, it's like when a little kid wishes for a unicorn for Christmas. Like, do you see any unicorns? Like, it's not happening. Like, you're going to get what you've always gotten. You're going to get what makes sense here. So, on the contrary, this is not like, hey, everybody, if we say it loud and say it proud, maybe the administration will listen and they will do the right thing. No, man, we got it. The screw job already happened in the past tense. We gave them what they wanted. They got what they wanted, and now it's over. And now what matters is the next time. It will not happen. Now what matters is how do we prevent this in 26 and 28? That's why I'm already looking ahead, because this screw job is baked in. Marco Rubio is our Secretary of State. Kristi Noem is our Homeland Security Secretary. This is who is going to be running the Trumpenreich, Gestapo, deporting millions. Kristi Noem and her boyfriend, allegedly, Corey Lewandowski. That's who we got. Serious deportations, by the way. 2024, mass deportations. Flying fortresses flying overhead and, tanks rolling in, a true blitzkrieg to get all these illegals out. Who will lead the Gestapo? Kristi Noem and her boyfriend, Corey Lewandowski. Yeah, serious deportations, by the way. Serious Gestapo. Anyway, but that's that. We're going to move on.
All right, so let's get into it. The first thing that comes to mind for me, is this is a reminder that radical Dems love radical Republicans. They need each other. Matter of fact, I can't even say that they need each other. They do need each other, but it's really the elites. The elites need radical Dems and radical Republicans. They need both sides to be extreme and polarizing opposites. And this is why they're willing to put so much money into these candidates that will be extreme. We'll sit back and look at, like, why are they pushing this on the right? Why are they pushing this on the left? This makes absolutely no sense. It doesn't seem like anything that a lot of people will get on board with, but they continue to push it because they know that they can put pressure on the moderates, whether it's the moderate Republicans or the moderate Democrats. They can put enough pressure on them to where they'll lean and have to go further to the radicals within their own party rather than to just work with the moderates that are right across that imaginary line that we're always so scared to walk across or go across because we think that our other team is going to turn our back on us, that our team is going to turn their back on us. The majority of people are moderates. However, we tend to pay attention to the loudest voice, the most extreme voices. So the moderates get convinced to go further away from where they typically stand in order to go work with and accept radical principles that are on their side. They will throw all common sense out the window. And when I use the word moderate, I guess what I typically mean is just common sense. The majority of people are common sense people, but there's so much money being thrown into politics that they can use it to convince leaders and influential people to get on board with, instead of working together and the moderates working together on both parties, because we've been convinced that a third party is impossible. And this is why the elites put so much money into the parties and put so much into the radical parts of the party, because what it does is it allows the elites to stay in power. Radicalism allows elites to stay in power. If moderates just got together and said, you know what, this is crazy over here. We got one side saying that boys should compete against girls in sports, and they're okay with teachers not telling the parents that their kids are transgenders. And then you got on the other side, whatever radical, things that they're pushing. I'm biased. Y'all know I tend to see the Democrats when it comes to the cultural stuff with all the woke ideologies as being more radical. But you got some of the more radical conservative policies. Maybe even from a standpoint, we're going to talk today about going so hard with the deportations. I don't know. I'm just bringing up different examples of how extremes on both sides are things that are, now people are going to be sitting here saying, that's not extreme. It's not extreme. The perception of extremes on both sides, they cripple the power of the moderates. If moderate people got together, think about this. Would there even be a need for putting that much money into politics? If moderates were willing to work together and people were willing to say, look, I'm not going to be convinced and feeling like I got to be a slave to this party, like I'm rooting for a sports team, the number one fan of my team. I don't have to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is use my common sense. I actually agree with these people more than I agree with the people that are pushing all this extreme stuff in my party. And that number would, in my opinion, significantly outweigh everybody else. And now you have a system of checks and balances. Now that moderate group can check and balance the struggle of all the radical ideologies in both parties. Think about that. There would be no need, like the money that these elites put into politics, it wouldn't matter as much, because now we don't need to be convinced why we should be scared into voting for this group or be scared into voting for this group, because they want to pump a whole bunch of money and use celebrity influencers and everybody else to push these terrible messages about the other side, right? So now we rationalize, well, I can't go over there, so I got to go over here. And there's not enough money to create a third party. It's not realistic. It doesn't work. And the third party candidates like an RFK Jr. who are making a significant push, what do they end up doing? They end up getting on board with one of the other groups. Not saying good or bad, not here to judge that. But if we had more moderates that were willing to get on board with, let's say, a third party candidate, whether it's RFK Jr. or anybody else, all right? Don't get stuck on RFK Jr. If we had enough moderates, like, don't we understand that the elites have us divided and they're conquering us? That's what I hear when I hear Nick talking about this. They'd have us throwing out our common sense to appease their interest. That's what they have us doing. If we wanted to get less money, or if we wanted to get money out of politics, the best way for us to do it is to come together. The common sense people on this side, the common sense people on this side, the common sense people over there, the common sense people that have never voted because they don't feel that they have a common sense party or candidates that they can vote for. Common sense removes all of the elites. It removes the big money donors on both sides. The elites know that the only way for them to stay in power is to make things as radical as possible. For one, you're paying attention to all that nonsense, and you're not focusing on the things that actually matter. You're not focusing on the commonalities. You're focusing on the differences. I've said it over and over. I've sat down with people and gone over, hey, where do you feel on these issues? People that have voted on the other side of me. I voted for Trump this last election, but people who were voting for Biden and then voted for Kamala Harris. And we agree on most of the issues. But typically it's emotions that sway us one way or another. And how do you create emotions in people? You push for radical on both sides. Do we really think that the elites at the top care or even respect the political parties? They're using them. They're playing chess. They don't care. They're doing what's in their best interest. They're working together to figure out, okay, we could play this group against this group. All right, boom, boom, boom. This should go as planned, and then we'll do. They're controlling us, and we're not even aware of it. They control us. Think about how you behave when you react with something so emotional. Think about how radical you can become when you become emotional about things. There's no logic in there. You're willing to crash out. And that's what we continue to do election after election. We all get caught up in it. We continue to crash out. We're giving away our power. We're giving away our power to the elites that simply just take that power and use it, and they recycle it back into politics and use it to divide us more and more. More and more. So perhaps this is the time where the radicals are losing power because things are getting so outrageous. And now it's one of those times where it just so happens where maybe Democrats are fed up and Republicans are fed up, the common sense ones. So perhaps this is a great time to come together. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why when you get a guy like Nick Fuentes, they go above and beyond to try to get us to hate him. Matter of fact, they try to get us to hate him before we even hear what he's saying. They don't even want us to watch him. They just want to paint the picture so we won't even go down that path. And if we do go down that path, then we're looking at him through a perspective of, oh, he's racist, he's an anti-Semite, he's a Nazi, he's like all these different things that they say about him. He's a sexist. But then when you actually listen to him, it becomes very clear whether you agree with everything he says or not. And it's not just Nick. And this is what a lot of people may not realize. I saw a comment on X where they reposted one of the clips that we do. And it was me calling out certain things in the Black community. And somebody commented and said, Nick Fuentes is woken, he's waking up white people, and now he's waking up Black people. And I just, reposted it or whatever, or replied to it or something, liked it. And I wanted to explain, but I didn't even explain it. And perhaps I should have. Nick Fuentes is not waking me up. Y'all are just new to me. Y'all are just new to me. And I think over time, you'll understand, it'll become very clear that these are my independent, free thinking thoughts. Even with Nick not voting. Yeah, I already done that. I already sat out 2 elections because I realized that both parties were BS. And then I got pulled in with this one because of how radical things were, right? I got to take my own advice, which I will go back to. Now, I'm not doing the whole lesser of 2 evils. Black people especially have been caught up in this for how long? So this is not Nick waking me up. The reason why I get excited to review Nick's videos is because, as a matter of fact, is the same reason why when I see other people that have common thoughts and push for people to be free thinkers. Nick just happens to have a huge influence. This happened with Tate, actually, before, when they tried to shut down Tate. And that just, I never watched Andrew Tate. I never watched Nick Fuentes until 3 weeks ago. And I only was brought to watch him because everybody was telling me not to watch him. Everybody was saying these crazy things about him. And when you look at history and you start going down some of these rabbit holes of what people call conspiracy theories, you start to learn very quickly, like, oh, they tried to paint this person in a different picture. With a lot of our former heroes, right? After they die, you try to change the narrative. Oh, y'all love Muhammad Ali. I grew up thinking everybody loves Muhammad Ali. But then when you look into it, you're like, oh, y'all kind of only started liking him when he could no longer fight physically or use his mouth to fight. So what happened? What happened there? What was the big distinction? And it's the case with a lot of different people. And what happens is you start to like clear out the lens that they've placed on you. It's like as you're growing up, you're constantly getting indoctrinated and manipulated to the point where it's like you have goggles on where you're seeing the world through a perspective that the elites and the powerful people want you to see it through. Not from a free thinker or somebody who is not controlled or leveraged in one way or another. So getting back to the actual video, I wrote down a bunch of notes, but these were the dominating thoughts, the ones that I just shared with y'all, that I had whenever I'm hearing a lot of these political conversations and people who are willing to critique both sides. This is what I'm hearing. The same, it's funny when you've been on both sides. I've been on the Democratic side, liberal, whatever, Republican, conservative. I voted for both. And you see the same exact BS on both. You see the same BS on both sides. The same things that Nick is complaining about when it comes to Trump. Oh, he promised this, he promised this, he promised this. He promised deportations. He promised no new wars. But now he's getting in a whole bunch of wars. He's not deporting. He promised us that he would release the Epstein files. He's not releasing that. Then I think back to what I used to get promised on the Democratic side. And sticking with the Republicans real quick, not only is he making all these promises and not keeping them, but you're actually fulfilling promises to another group. Here you were supposed to do all these things, right? For the people that voted for you, for Americans. But what you're actually doing, from the looks of it, is it seems like you're being controlled by Israel and doing Israel's bidding. So you're ignoring the American people and doing Israel's bidding. That's what it looks like from my perspective. So when I look back at how I used to look at things on the Democratic side, here I am. I remember Joe Biden when he was running in 2020. I remember in 2019, I remember I was in Brooklyn. I was on my way to a call with a doctor, and I was obsessed with this stuff. Y'all know I'm still obsessed with it. And I remember Joe Biden saying that his number one priority was the LGBTQ community. And here, like, that just struck me. Now, I was already off of them. Like I said, I hadn't voted. That was my second time not voting, just sitting out the elections. And I've shared before, maybe I'll share again, not on this video, but why I decided to. But it's for many of the reasons that Nick is pointing out as far as leveraging my vote. When I heard Joe Biden say that the LGBTQ community was his number one priority, that was, I would say it was a slap in the face, but I was excited about it because I sent it to my family and friends, who were the majority of them, all of them perhaps, were all voting for Joe Biden. I thought that it would be a slap in the face to them. I said, here we have the most loyal group of voters, Black people. Black people in America, most loyal group of voters, vote blindly, blind faith in the Democratic Party. Whether they do anything for us or well, never do anything, but regardless, Black people vote Democrat. So when I think about Joe Biden, or when I was thinking about Joe Biden and his impact on the Black community, his influence with the crime bill when Bill Clinton was president, him pushing that across, probably destroyed more Black families than any other piece of legislation in the history of our country. If I'm wrong, please let me know what other legislation did it. Number one problem in the Black community, in my opinion, is fatherlessness. This is why Lyndon B. Johnson decided to put these social programs to where it would remove the father from the household and the government becomes the Black father. That's who the mama relies on. Not going to get into that. However, getting back to the crime bill and its impact, and considering how many Black people are in America who consistently vote Democrat, even though you don't fulfill the promises that you say, compared to the LGBTQ community and how small of a community that is compared to Black people, and especially when you consider the history of Black people, right? Contributing to America, of course. All right, not to say that the LGBTQ community didn't, but I don't recall Joe Biden putting legislation in play that destroyed LGBTQ communities, especially to the degree that the crime bill did when it came to the Black community. So no victimhood stuff over here. People are responsible for the decision that they make. You're always going to get that from me. But I just thought that it was pretty funny that the Democrats who play on Black victimhood so long, and here you have Joe Biden, who's responsible, who pushed legislation that's responsible for ruining or being a factor in destroying the Black community, I think we can say, even though it's always going to be on the people. Let me not take any accountability from that. But that he said that his number one priority was the LGBTQ community. So let me not make it just about black folk, right? But I'm just trying to use examples. The main takeaway is that there's no trust. There's no we, like Nick has said on the last couple shows, when it comes to what we're getting. No. Perhaps a good exercise is to jot down some of the things that you voted for in the past 3 to 4 elections and what actually has been delivered. What have they even tried at? Perhaps we're all getting bamboozled. And perhaps now is the time where a lot of people who have been fooled will look back and say, you know what? It's time for us to figure this out together. Forget all this radical ideology stuff. Forget all this stuff that pulls us apart, divides us so the elites can conquer us. Let's take our power back. Let's take our power back. We are the people, right? The power is supposed to be in the people. When we sit down with people that we think, and this is common sense people, when common sense people sit down with people that they believe that they're on polarizing opposites of the spectrum with a lot of different topics and issues, what I think will happen when those people sit down, the common sense people, is that they'll realize that they're a lot closer than they thought they were. I think there'll be a lot of empathy, a lot of understanding as to why I may have aligned with this radical ideology over here and why I may have aligned with this radical ideology over here. I thought that I had no other option. I mean, y'all were pushing this. Y'all were pushing. All right, so we can agree on most things. Let's not get tricked off into being emotional and giving away our power. Because when we do this, what ends up happening is nobody wins. And then what typically happens is this. A Democrat wins. Now Republicans can just complain. Now everybody who voted Democrat, now they feel like they have to defend the person that they voted for, even though they know deep down that that person is not doing anything that they even voted for. They're not doing the things that you're not doing the things that I voted for you to do. But I'm still defending you because it's us versus them. And it's the same thing when a Republican wins. Now the Democrats are taking shots. Now I got to defend because I voted for Trump. I got to defend Trump by any means. And now when somebody's critical of Donald Trump, what's my first response? Oh, well, look what Joe Biden did. That's what I always used to get when I would criticize Joe Biden and the Democrats. Well, look at Trump. And I got to be honest. It seems like on the conservative side, there's a lot more free thinkers because there's a whole lot of Donald Trump supporters, some of the most staunch Donald Trump supporters. He's only been in office 7-8 months, and people are already viciously going against him, people that helped him get elected in the first place. I can't say that that energy was the same with Joe Biden. Liberals, Dems, y'all were defending Joe Biden by any means necessary. To the point where it's like the man could have dementia, have whatever cognitive decline that he has, and y'all still embracing him to the point where you caused him to have one of the most embarrassing moments in perhaps political history when he got on stage in that form and debated Donald Trump. That's embarrassing. There's a lot of people that will only know Joe Biden for that. That'll be the first thing that they think about. This man that's had a long career in politics, his family, in my opinion, should be ashamed of himself. His wife, why does she keep putting him on TV? This is embarrassing. Let him chill. He served his country. But people don't want to give up power, just like the elites don't want to give up power. And the elites will keep pouring in more money on Joe Biden if they feel like he has some type of value that he can provide to them. And it's a shame, but a lot of times families, they don't want that money to stop. Because even though these politicians may convince themselves that they get into it for the right reasons, their families like the perks and the benefits that come with it. And then obviously, as you stay in this evil system or this corrupt system, it tends to corrupt people, right? You lay down with dogs, wake up with fleas. So I'm not sure that there's anything else that we need to cover on this stuff. I kind of already talked your heads off, but I guess I'll leave you with the overall concept of everything that I'm saying that Nick mentioned, which is collective action. Stop giving your vote away for free. Collective action. Let's sit down. Let's talk with common sense people. The more common sense people come together, the less we give away our power, the less we end up on this hamster wheel, the more we can advance society and do better. The more we'll understand that there's a whole bunch of diverse people that have common sense and can work together for what diversity is supposed to be, which is bringing different thoughts together in order to achieve a common outcome. And if we're not segregated and separated from each other, then we'll have a different understanding. I grew up in a very diverse town, Montclair, New Jersey. I realized very quickly when I went to college and had experiences outside of my town, like, oh, these experiences with white people or whoever else, whatever, I'm just using the white and black example. But these experiences with people are different. And I'm sure my white friends that I grew up with, they're probably looking at it like, oh, this experience with black kids that didn't grow up around white kids is different. Maybe the Indian kids are thinking that. When you grow up in a diverse town, you have a different perception. When you're from pre-K kindergarten, your best friends are all different types, right? All different types of people. Now, when you get older, you end up going and hanging with most of the people that you play sports with. So then it can divide a bit, but you still in your mind, when I'm going through school, those are some of my best friends that grew up. I may not hang with them, every day now because we're doing different things. But my perception now as I go through the world is totally different. So it's not a fantasy that I'm thinking about. It's really just common sense. When you sit down with people that have common sense, you want to work with them. You may end up liking them, being friends with them. You realize, and instead of focusing on the differences, just naturally, you'll be vulnerable enough to lay down your guard and focus on all the similarities that we have. So that's what y'all got for me today. That's what y'all got for me. Man, I've been talking y'all heads off on a lot of these. I appreciate all y'all. Thank y'all so much. I love having these combos with y'all. I love having these combos building with y'all, and I'm very appreciative. I'm very appreciative, and I do not take this moment for granted. I do not take this opportunity for granted. So thank y'all, and I'll see y'all soon. Ew. It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.